It was a cold, windy night in Beijing on November 14th, 1995. The streets were deserted with only a few flickering streetlights cutting through the thick fog. At the Yuanyuan Garden bus terminal, the midnight bus 375 was waiting for its final passengers. The bus was quiet, with only a few passengers scattered in their seats. The driver yawned, tired from the long day, while the conductor leaned against the side of the bus, seemingly bored. As the driver was about to close the doors and pull out of the station, a young man came running up, gently supporting an elderly lady by the arm. "Wait, please!" the young man called out, smiling politely. "This old lady needs help getting on." The driver glanced at the young man and shrugged. "All right, get on quick," he said. The young man carefully helped the old lady onto the bus, guiding her to a window seat before sitting down in the back. The elderly lady caught her breath and smiled at him warmly. "Thank you, young man. It's not often you meet such a kind soul these days," she said. The young man smiled modestly. "No need to thank me, ma'am. Just take it slow. It's chilly tonight, so make sure to stay warm." The old lady nodded, her eyes narrowing slightly, as if deep in thought, her frail hands clutching the seat. The bus rolled on through the empty streets, the windows fogging up slightly from the cold. The silence inside the bus felt heavy, and the few passengers on board sat quietly, lost in their thoughts. After about 10 minutes, the bus pulled up to a deserted stop. The door creaked open, and an icy wind swept into the bus. 3 figures boarded. 2 of them were dressed in strange, old-fashioned clothing from the Qing dynasty, supporting a 3rd figure between them who seemed unconscious. Their clothes and pale faces made them stand out in the dim bus lights. Even stranger, their footsteps made no sound. The conductor hesitated for a moment, but then asked, "Tickets, please?" The 3 figures remained silent, not even acknowledging the question. They walked slowly down the aisle and stopped in the middle of the bus. None of the passengers dared to look directly at them. The atmosphere turned tense, as if the air had grown colder. The young man glanced at the elderly lady, noticing that she was staring intently at the 3 new passengers. Her face had gone pale, and her lips pressed into a thin line. Something was wrong. Then suddenly, the silence was broken. "Thief!" the old lady screamed, pointing at the young man. Her voice was sharp, cutting through the stillness like a knife. "You stole my wallet!" The young man, shocked and confused, blinked in disbelief. "What? No, ma'am! I didn't take anything!" he protested, his voice trembling slightly. But the old lady wouldn't back down. "Don't you lie to me! I saw you take it! Give it back!" Her voice grew louder, catching the attention of the other passengers who began to shift nervously in their seats. "I didn't touch your wallet," the young man exclaimed, his face flushed with panic. "I just helped you on the bus." The conductor hurried over. All right, calm down. Let's settle this outside," he said, trying to defuse the situation. The old lady stood up, grabbing the young man by the arm. "We're going to the police station," she insisted. "You're not getting away with this." Left with no choice, the young man allowed himself to be pulled off the bus, still protesting his innocence. The bus doors slammed shut behind them, and it continued down the dark road, disappearing into the fog. The young man turned to the old lady, exasperated. "Why did you accuse me like that? I didn't do anything," he asked, his breath visible in the cold night air. The old lady let go of his arm, her expression softening. She sighed deeply before speaking in a low, urgent voice. "Young man, I just saved your life." He stared at her, stunned. "Save my life? What are you talking about?" She glanced around the empty street, then leaned closer. Those 3 people on the bus, they weren't human. The young man's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The old lady nodded gravely. "I saw it. Their feet, they weren't touching the ground. They were floating." Her words sent a chill down his spine, colder than the wind cutting through the street. He remembered the strange feeling when they boarded, the unnatural silence that followed them. The old lady continued, her voice shaking. "I've seen things like this before. Those weren't living people, and if you had stayed on that bus, you might never have come back." The young man felt a wave of cold sweat break out across his body. He glanced back down the road where the bus had disappeared into the mist. Had he really just escaped death? The next morning, the news broke across Beijing. Bus 375 had vanished without a trace. The bus, along with its driver, conductor, and all the passengers, never made it to its final destination at Xiangshan. A massive search was launched, but it wasn't until days later that the burned-out wreckage of the bus was found near a remote lake outside the city. Inside, the bodies of the driver and conductor were discovered, charred beyond recognition. But there was no sign of the passengers. Even stranger, forensic experts reported that the bodies had decayed far beyond what was normal, as though they had been dead for much longer than just a few days. The entire case was shrouded in mystery, and no explanation was ever found for what happened to the bus or its passengers. The young man never forgot that night. Whenever he thought about it, he couldn't shake the old lady's last words. Her voice echoed in his mind, a warning that haunted him. In this world, strange things happen. You've got to be careful, or you might just run into something. Not of this world.